you doing? This is Peggy Richards Patty. This podcast is a knitting podcast called Through the Back Loop, and I come to you from Oceanside, California, and I hope that you're doing well. We're in the middle of our global pandemic, and just checking in to see if everybody's staying sane, and it's just unbelievable that we're all having this shared experience, and just so much gratitude to all the people that are on the front lines. But as the days go on, I'm starting to become more and more aware of how much it's affecting all of us, and that we are all completely disoriented and kind of thrown off track, and just trying to, create new routines and be smart and stay safe, but also recognizing kind of this underlying grief or underlying tension that the whole world is sharing. It's really unbelievable times. So I hope that you are finding some good coping strategies. At the end of this podcast, I'll give you a glimpse into a few of mine. And just let me know how you're doing. Hang in there. I know it's hard for everyone. So this is a knitting podcast, so I'll go ahead and move on to the knitting. I am a seamstress as well, but knitting is definitely my first love. But in the midst of this pandemic, I've kind of gone back to the sewing machine. So my first finished object is actually, I've been sewing a few masks. Here's one that it's the type that has the ties. So these are great because they'll fit just about anybody. I had made some the same style with the elastic, but like a lot of sewers or sewists are running out of elastic. And I'm actually on the hunt for one that's actually comfortable. So I've tried a couple different styles. This one goes over your nose better, however, and it has the elastic, so it's comfortable. But this one, when you wear this thing and you talk, then it ends up sliding down off your nose. So if anyone has any masks that they feel are mask patterns that they feel like are really comfortable and do the job while being comfortable, please let me know, because I'm on the hunt. I've mostly made these for just friends and family, but I think I've made about 25 now, and so all the rest of them that I make will be going to either one of the online organizations that's collecting, or even I was thinking about the Humane Society here in Oceanside. There's just so many different organizations that could use them. So anyway, that kind of brought me back to the sewing machine lately. But as far as knitting, finished objects, my latest finished object is a pair of socks. These are called the Fairy Maiden socks. It is a free pattern on Ravelry. I knit these out of, what was the name of it? It was Plucky yarn. Yeah, this is Plucky sock, and I don't have the colorway written down, but you can see that it's kind of this cranberry color. And I purchased this at Stitches West, which seems like a million years ago now, even though it was at the end of February. And when I think back of Stitches West, I just think, wow, I was so lucky that I got to go, and so lucky that, I had no idea that would be the last trip that I would take for probably a pretty long time. But anyway, these are knit on size 1 needles, 63 stitches top down. It does this cable pattern. I don't know if you can see it that well, but it's just kind of a 1-stitch cable pattern, and I did do it without a cable needle. So that's easy to do. My only complaint about these socks, and it's really not with the pattern, it's more like with the yarn, and you probably noticed right away that they're kind of two different colors. And this is because I started with this, no, I started this one. I started here, top down. It was really this gorgeous cranberry color. And I did notice, that there was some variance, of course, because it's hand-dyed yarn. And so I knit the first sock, and I had caked it up, and I was pulling from the outside of the cake, and it kept kind of twisting. So I thought, well, on the second sock, I'll start from the center pull and pull it out. And so that's what I did. In no time at all, I started realizing, oh my gosh, that color is just so different. It's so much lighter. So I knit to about here, then I broke the yarn, and I came back to the outside of the cake. So it does kind of start darkening up a bit. But anyway, that's just one of the pitfalls of using hand-dyed yarn. And I've actually looked at another pair of socks that I have, and that exact same thing has happened before. Even though I just kind of kept it going, I didn't change whether it was center pull or pulled from the outside of the cake, but just the nature of the yarn just kind of being inconsistent. So if anybody has ideas on how you deal with that, please let me know. It's not really a big deal. Like when I try them on together and you're looking down, and especially if I wear jeans or whatever, it's not that this part of the sock isn't that much different. It's mostly just on the cuff. So it's not the end of the world, but I think there's something to be said. As much as I love the hand-dyed yarn and the beautiful colors of hand-dyed yarn, sometimes the machine milled and the more commercial yarn for socks, especially if you're just using one color, it stays more consistent. So I hadn't really given that a lot of thought before. But if anybody else has any kind of little hacks or hints on what could, address that problem, I'd really appreciate it. But all in all, these are super cozy, great pattern. It was free on Ravelry. Again, that is Fairy Maiden Sock by This Handmade Life. And I really recommend the pattern. They fit well. They're very comfortable, easy to follow, no complaints at all. So anyway, that's my first finished object. Second finished object is what I'm wearing. If you watched one of my previous episodes when this was a whip, this is called the Rocho-ish, I don't know how to say it, by Kate Davies. And it's like a Bolero type wrap. And the way it is knit is the long rectangular piece is knit with the bobbles, and then you pick up along the side and you knit down. So it's a very simple construction. I had read about this pattern on Ravelry before I finished it, and some people had chosen to do 3 stitch bobbles instead of 5 stitch bobbles, but the pattern calls for 5 stitch bobbles, which I did, and I was a little concerned at first about the way some of them were shaped, but when I blocked they kind of got more consistent and more even. There are a couple of them that I wouldn't mind taking a little thread and tacking it down a little bit more. But anyway, this was a kit from Kate Davies' website, and the wool is her wool, and it's 100% Scottish wool, and it's a name that I won't even begin to pronounce, but I'll put it on the screen for you. And the pattern itself, it goes pretty quick. The pattern itself calls for a 10.5 needle. The gauge my gauge showed me that I needed to do something, go down to a smaller size, which is so common for me. So I wasn't surprised by that. So I used a size 9 on this part, and then I started getting really concerned that I was going to run out of yarn because it was a kit. And so on the part where I picked up in the back and knit down, and also on the ribbing, that was actually done with a size 10. So, you know, I think it helped when I went up to the 10. I wasn't that close to running out. So, anyway, a little bit smaller size needle than what the pattern called for. But it was fun, and I was kind of drawn to this pattern simply because it's different than anything I have in my wardrobe. Like, I don't have any other, well, I have maybe one other shrug, but it's rare that I knit them. And here we are. It's April 19th, I think, today, and it's already starting to warm up here in Southern California. So I probably won't get a lot of good out of this until next fall, and I hope that I end up wearing it. Sometimes when you go out of your comfort zone, you're never sure if you're going to really wear it. So we'll see. But it was a fun knit, and it went pretty quick. This shawl pin is a piece made by Jewel, Jul, and I'll put a link below. She has really beautiful just little accessories and things for knitted, for your knits, and I've purchased some of her things before. This was purchased when I went to Stitches SoCal last November. So it was a nice little piece to be able to, you have to have something, some kind of closure there because there's no buttons or anything on it. So anyway, I was happy to have another finished object. Let's see, moving on to whips. I am actually working on my very first Hohi Locatelli pattern. I think every other knitter in the world has knit something from Hohi, and I love her podcast, and I just really, I follow her on Instagram, and I love a lot of her patterns, but for whatever reason, I have not knit one before. And this is going to be a shawl, and I see a little mistake right there. Oh, that's too bad. I see a mistake already right there. I don't know. I may have to go and see if I can fix that. I'm not sure if it's just it got caught on something, or if it's really a mistake. I'll have to go back and look. But anyway, this shawl, and I'm kind of mid-row, so it's not great to show you, but it has that drop stitch, which after it's blocked, it'll look a lot better. It'll be a lot more consistent. It has, every once in a while, it has a row of drop stitches. It also, every once in a while, has a row of eyelet. And the rest of it is garter stitch. You do have some short rows, but they're the really, really easy kind of short rows, and you don't have to pick up the wrap. So once you kind of get used to the pattern, it's really easy. And this is going to be a gift for someone that shall remain nameless, because I know they watch the podcast. And anyway, it's just kind of a really good, pretty much mindless knit, which is kind of in order for now. You don't want anything that stresses you out even more. So I've just been knitting along on that, and I think it'll be fun to give as a gift. This yarn is La Bien-Aimée, and the colorway is written in French, and I don't have the label in front of me, but it is a sock yarn. And is this it? Let me see. Yeah, this is it. But everything's French, so, and I couldn't begin to pronounce it. But anyway, I purchased this from La Merced, and she's got an online yarn store, and I thought I would do socks with it, but then when it came in the mail, it was just kind of like, oh, that's too pretty to just make socks with. So it's going to be the shawl called The Storm by Hohi Locatelli. So anyway, really nice, fun knit. I've been really enjoying that. Let's see. As far as that's my only whip for right now. I am thinking about casting on. Um, I made this purchase recently from Chelsea Yarns. I've just been trying to support a lot of the fiber businesses. Her shop is in New Jersey, and um, she had to close her shop, but she's a dyer, and so I did order enough of this to make some kind of a summery type top. This is one of her new bases. It's Luxe Soleil, and the Soleil part is the content is 90% superwash merino and 10% linen. So I thought, for the early summer, this might really be nice. I don't know if you can see, but there's just little hints of stuff that you can tell that it's got a little bit of linen in it. Linen is one of my more favorite fibers to use. Like here's some stuff. I don't know if you can see, but there's these little places that just kind of let you know that it's linen. And living here in Southern California, in the summer, I wear linen all the time, and I'm looking really forward to it. This, I don't know if I said, the colorway is confetti, and it's really bright. I don't normally go for things this bright, but I don't know, maybe that's good to just do something cheerful. So looking forward to knitting this up into some kind of a tee. I haven't decided 100% yet, but I'm thinking I might do the Tegna, or Tenya, however you say it, by Caitlin Hunter. I've done one of hers, done that pattern before, and I've just worn it a million times. So that might become what it becomes when it grows up. And I was thinking I have this piece of fabric already in my stash, and this is also linen. Boy, that's really coming out bright. Yeah, both of these things. Actually, even the sweater I'm wearing, maybe I'm leaning towards brights and I don't even realize it. That's not normal for me. But I had this in my fabric stash, and I was thinking, whoo, that's going to make a bright outfit. But this could be a tee, and then this will maybe be like a pair of pants, wide-legged pants or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, I've got to make a decision on that pretty quickly because I don't have that much time left on the shawl, and I definitely want to do some kind of summery garment since the season is getting ready to change. So it's on the horizon. There were a couple of other things that I wanted to include in today's podcast before I sign off. One of them is just a little tour of this room that I'm in right now. I just recently tidied it up a bit because just looking back on some of my podcasts was like, oh my gosh, that's looking so messy. And so I did tidy it up, and I thought I'd give you a little tour of this room that I spend so much time in. And then after that, I am going to just put some pictures in of what I've been doing, the strategies I've been using to just deal with the stress and just the disorientation and everything that we're experiencing. Just some things that I'm doing to try to stay sane. And of course, knitting's always a huge part of that. That's always been, no matter what's happening in my life, that's just a constant, is just, staying so connected to that. And so, of course, that goes without saying. But there's some other things, just trying to build some new structures into the day. I used to go to the gym, and I had a spinning class that I took, and gave me a chance to socialize with other people and that kind of stuff. I had my favorite coffee shop, all that kind of stuff. And, my knitting group added structure and connection to my life. And thank goodness for Zoom, that we've been able to connect with other family members. And the knitting group and old friends, and I'm really thankful for that. As far as like structure in the day, I've tried to remain constant with still getting up at the same time and going to bed at the same time as I did before. Just spending time in the garden and nature. Although until recently it was so rainy here in Southern California that we weren't able to do that much. So I'm finding that now that the sun shines back, that's just so uplifting. So after the little tour of my sewing/knitting room, I'm going to just include a little garden tour and just pictures of some of the things that that have helped me deal with this new life that we're all living. And I do recognize that I'm very blessed and lucky, but it's still challenging for everyone. And I hope that you're putting structures in place for yourself, and to those of you that all of a sudden have your whole entire family back under one roof, 24/7. I know as much as everybody loves their family, there's times that you just have to figure out ways to try not to get on each other's nerves too much. So I know that we're all in the same boat, and I wish you well. I'll go ahead and say goodbye, but I will tack on the little tour of this room and some of my strategies. Until next time, everyone stay safe, stay smart, stick with it, even though it's so hard. We're doing the right thing, those of us that are staying inside. Have a good day. Bye-bye. So here's a little tour of my sewing room/knitting room/office. And I recently cleaned it up for you guys because my backdrop was looking so messy. So I just thought I'd give you a little tour. Right there is the door. You come inside and there's pictures of my children and my family. Here's a little nook with some yarn. My spinning wheel, my Lendrum spinning wheel that I hardly ever use, and I feel bad about that. Here's my sewing area, my ironing. This is a great ironing board. It's actually for quilting, but I love it because it's nice and wide and easy to use. Over here is my bulletin board with just some random things that I need to refer to sometimes. This thing's all about interfacing. There's one there all about all different size quilts, needle guide. There's some of my measurements. There's a picture of my husband and I in Hawaii a long time ago. Here's a whole bunch of thread. You've probably seen my little beaded thing of Ollie. And then this piece of furniture is from IKEA, and I just recently tidied this up because it was looking so messy. I just find that my life has to be edited every once in a while because I just have a tendency to keep every little tiny thing. But on the bottom, there's a lot of books. The very bottom is kind of a hodgepodge of everything, but mostly books about sewing is on the very, very bottom. You can see the manual for my overlocker. This section is kind of miscellaneous, but a lot of stuff about yarn. And then in each one of these containers, it hides a lot of my junk. One of my most prized possessions is this little teapot that belonged to my great-grandmother. And her family came over from Ireland. And so that's her teapot. And I remember her using that when I was a little girl. And then just some of my yarn stash. I have more, but it's hidden upstairs. There's, this also belonged to my great-grandmother, this glass piece. There's a really cool family story about that where I'm not going to go into it, but it belonged to her. And anyway, pictures of my kids when they were really little. And there's a picture of my daughter, picture of my son when he was a baby. There's Ollie. And in these containers, you know, it's just a mix of fabric and patterns and yarn and all kinds of stuff. This shelf right here is it's all knitting references that I use from time to time. This one's all about knitting. Over here we have my cutting table. Here's a lot of the things that I was using for masks. And my husband made me this little, so sweet of him, he made me this pegboard, and a lot of my tools and stuff I keep on there. And there's just different things everywhere. I love my Bernina sewing machine and know how lucky I am that I got to purchase that. This machine is a cover stitch machine by Brother. I'll take this off so you can see it. My son recently had me hem up some of his t-shirts, so that came in handy. And then I also have a serger that I absolutely love. This is by Baby Lock, and it's the Imagine. So I'm super lucky. I have this table that my husband made the styrofoam thing on it so that it's really great. I haven't done any quilting lately, but it comes in really handy when you're doing a quilt, when you're quilting it yourself, and the surface is all the same height so that the quilt doesn't pull. Back there, just a lot of miscellaneous tools. Over here, we have my lights set up for the podcast, and there's a bookcase back there with lots of other yarn and miscellaneous items. But the thing that I wanted to show you, and I'm going to swing back this way, that I wanted to show you about knitting is how I store my needles. I've been knitting for a long time, and so I started even way back before interchangeable sets, and so I've collected these needles over the years, and most of 99.9% of these are not interchangeables. And so the way I organized it is with this shoe rack thing, I guess that's what you call it. And it's clear plastic, and I just organize it by size. So I started with 0, that little circle up there. You probably can't see it, but that's a 0. And then it just goes numerically in order. And so, for example, these are all my size 7s. And I just put double pointed needles and wood needles and metal needles all together, and I always, put it back in the slot so I know exactly where it is. And then it goes down to, here's my Addies, interchangeables, and some other little notions there. But the needles that I use most often actually are here on my desk. They're going to be hiding now. I'm going to make a liar out of myself. I guess they're in the other room. But the needles I use the most are Chagus. Those are some of the shorties, but those are my most used. However, it's very handy to have them all in one place. Let's go back over there. Because in a moment's notice, I can grab whatever size I need. So this is a lifetime collection of my needles.